What up, what up, what up? What's good? Welcome to Hip-Hop Theology, podcast expressing God, the OG of hip-hop.
You know, it's easy to say don't fall for it, but people, I don't know. It seems from my perspective that they're just under like an illusion, right? And is it fair to say that, you know, you shouldn't fall for something if you're already falling for something?
Yes, it's fair. Yes, it's like, for me, KRS-One has been prophetic, right? First album that I ever got, like, and I don't think my dad knew he was buying it, but when I was younger, the first album I ever got was a KRS-One album. It was the first album I ever bought, and I just listened to it over and over and over. And his prophetic style hasn't changed in over 30 years of my life. I don't know about what you guys got to say about that.
The issue with it's not an issue with KRS. One thing I've noticed with KRS is that you either love him or you hate him. And I think for those who hate him are those who don't like to face reality, because KRS has been the teacher from day one. And he doesn't subscribe to, you know, the big music. He doesn't subscribe to the music industry as a whole, but he definitely doesn't vibe with the big companies. And he has never blown up because of the messages he puts in his music. He calls his music edutainment. So you can be educated while you're entertained. But the issue with society is that they either want education on the left or entertainment on the right. So when you ride that line, people are forced to tap their foot and bob their heads without necessarily dancing, if that makes any sense. Because KRS doesn't make music to dance to.
No.
KRS makes music for you to move to.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
All right. KRS coming out.
He makes music for you to move to while you're thinking. So he feeds you without you even knowing. And the masses don't understand that. So if you were to play something by KRS, he'll plant the seed in your mind that, you know, like a mustard seed. He'll plant that seed in your mind, and that's really all you need if you are of the thinking persuasion. You have to be willing to think to listen to KRS. And there is so much in this that it's not like he went from Malcolm X to George Floyd. Like, there's a lot in there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot in there. You know, telling you to get your money up, telling you have this big degree, telling you Republicans and Democrats are the same.
That's right.
You know, most people don't want to come to terms with that. You know, me slapping you with my left hand is no different than me slapping you with the right hand. One might hurt a little more, but a slap is still a slap. You know, so okay, well today or yesterday it was MAGA hats. Today, you know, Joe's in office. So now they give us the bone with Kamala. What's next? What's coming after Kamala? Because after Barack, look who we got.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. They gave us Barack for 8 years. Let's pacify them for 8 years. Why? Because they were gonna jam it to us with this fool that just left. So because they jammed it to us with this fool that just left, we're gonna give them Kamala. What's coming after Kamala? Not only is she black, she's female.
She's Asian too. You got all those. She's Indian.
The Indian, I don't, you know, Indians are kind of.
I say that religious reasons. The religion they practice.
I just say, you know what? Okay, the Indians have assimilated, but the black part and female, I just wonder what's coming after her. That's all.
I gotta go. One of the reasons I love KRS-One, the teaching, all that stuff, but there's always positivity too, right? So he starts off positive. Keep your head up. Never let them get you down, basically. Never let them get you fed up. Just step up and get your rep up. You know, we already talked about cash up and all that. Like, before, you know, he's telling you the whole system's a setup and there's all the stuff to watch out for. But before that, get yourself together before you start this revolution, before you start this battle. Because, you know, I'm Haitian. Always down for revolution. That's how we change the world, right? I always go back to the Haitian Revolution and why so many of these white patriarchal societies that we talk about, colonizers, don't talk a lot about Haiti, don't teach about the Haitian Revolution, is because the black man stood up to them and kicked their ass. And they decided, I'm fighting for my freedom. Men, women, children, no matter what your religious background is, whether you're a voodoo priest, you're Christian, you're Muslim, we all getting together and we're gonna change the way society looks. We're gonna change how you treat us. You know, that's getting yourself up first and then going into this battle, this revolution, and not to fall for it. I mean, this is what he says. But the revolution only works for those that will participate in it. You know? So, I mean, I love KRS-One. I could go on for this. What you gotta say, Aaron?
Oh yeah, you're very excited. I guess my question would be, how do we get people to participate? Because it seems like, you know, KRS-One goes through an elaborate list of people, historical events, bringing up all these things to paint this vivid picture in the listener's mind of corruption, injustice. You know, this is stuff that we have to pay attention to. But how do we actually get people to wake up and see this? You know, like see that someone like KRS-One's been spreading truth for a very long time, and people have not budged. We're still voting Democrat, Republican. We're still being pacified. We're still being killed. We're still being silenced. You know, like, I guess at their very deeper root, what is KRS-One asking of us? You know, like, I feel like there's a deeper question that's being asked.
Asking. Let me not say that. I think what he is doing, and when we talked about what Gogo talked about, is he is really teaching you and trying to open up anybody who wants their eyes to be open so you see the situation you're really in. See the situation you're in, but see that you have the power to change it. Like, really open yourself up. I may be poor, I may live, 5 people in one room. It's gonna be a struggle, but if we work together in harmony, we can change this. And it's not only us working, but you gotta do this politically too, right? Like, although he's talking about Republicans and Dems are the same, and it's true, right? But there still has to be ways you go about changing it. You gotta work for it. I think your vote also counts, personally. I think education is important, whether you get it in school or in the streets. I don't know what education in terms of school is gonna look like after COVID. I don't know what a degree means after COVID, although I'm getting this master's, right? I want to get a PhD. I don't know what this means. I might be able to teach somebody and make $50,000 a year.
If you're lucky.
If I am lucky. But it's something personal. Like, education is important to me. But that's the only way you change, the only way you grow, the only way you break systems and habits for me. And I'm not only talking about school, but education is the only way to do that.
That's interesting that you bring up the topic of education as a means of liberation, which I agree. But even in that, there's challenges because information is controlled, right? And KRS-One talks about that as well. But what do we do about the person that's trying to know more, but just seems not to have the resources or just can't get past the filter that has been put over the information to help people really, because theologically speaking, we have yet to even talk about how, religion has been a very heavy factor in keeping people ignorant. It's not like you sign up for a religion or a faith and they're gonna just teach you everything. There's also restrictions and limited information within religions as well. So it's not like, giving your life to Christ is you're gonna learn everything, kind of thing, because like politics, there's still some level of manipulation and control there too. And we see it in all walks of life, even the education system, public school system, like who's in charge of the Board of Ed and who's determining these curriculums for our kids that are learning. What kind of history are they teaching them? What kind of math are they teaching them? Still, these are things that, I get it. We got to become aware and take back, as people. But again, it seems so difficult though, right? Because there's so many other things at play that keep us either A, ignorant, or B, scared to move and scared to go against something bigger than us, like an empire.
But see, that's part of his point with even the title, Don't Fall For It. The idea isn't so much to teach you everything, but just to awaken your consciousness. If you can understand that the Democrats and Republicans are the same, you start thinking differently. You start wondering, okay, well, there's a $1,400 additional stimulus package coming out. Why? What's going to be the end result of that? Why are they giving it to you? What are you going to have to end up paying back? What are they going to take from you later on as a result of it? Don't assume that because the Republicans said no and the Democrats said yes, that they're on your side. That kind of thing. Don't assume that because you have a degree, you're going to do so much better. The idea so much is like I would always tell my oldest son, when you go to college, we're not paying for you to go to college to learn what to think. We sent you to school to learn how to think. And I think in when you look at it from that perspective, getting people to start asking questions would be enough for KRS. Because people are just taking answers now. Answers to questions that they're not even asking. But the difference now is if you go and ask questions, now they have to answer your questions as opposed to you just taking whatever statements they've been given for however long. Why? Because every 4 years they're going to come, oh, we need your vote. Okay, well, if you start asking, okay, well, what did you do in the last 4 years? Now they have to prove something. As opposed to say, okay, well, we're going to dangle this black woman in front of you. We're going to dangle this black man in front of you. We're going to dangle this COVID relief in front of you. Ask, well, who was making money during COVID? Ask questions like that. Yeah. And if you can figure out who was making money during COVID, then you can figure out truly where COVID came from and why. I look at things that way, not because I can necessarily change it, but then the idea also is, Joel, he had said earlier about just knowing the difference between the parties even. What can be done about it is that, something? If you can get enough people to think this way and start asking questions, start your own party. Mm-hmm. Start by having your own representation in your community, your school board, your council. From there, your borough president. From there, your mayor, and so on and so on and so on. As opposed to, okay, well, I'm gonna vote for him because he's black. I'm gonna vote for her because she's brown. Is that really enough? You know, because if you look at the Jewish community, they have doctors that they go to. Why? Because the community paid for that doctor to go through school. So it was understood that that doctor will come back to the community and work in that community. They have lawyers in their community. Why? Because they pay for this lawyer to go through school, and that's their job to the Hasidim, right? They have people who they put in office. We're going to vote you onto the school board. Why? Because we need you to do our bidding in the city. You know, it's not a fluke that wherever they have a lot of them in their community, they have their representation. They have their own hospitals. They have their own. All the police over there are Jewish. Even in the housing complex, it's all Jewish. Although it's a public, you know, it's a public building, but it's 98% Hasidic. You know, it's not by accident. So I think if people who listen to KRS, Black and Brown, incorporated that kind of community-minded thinking and action, even on a small scale, it would be a huge win. But again, it takes work, and not everybody's willing to do that work.
I want to answer that question differently, right? Because I think, Aaron, you're talking about something about equality is kind of what I heard in your question a lot. And we've talked about equality before in different places. But it brings me back, biblically speaking. Not everybody is the same. Not everybody can take the same in. Mm-hmm. Some people only want milk, and that's all they're ever going to take in. They're never going to graduate to like mashed food,
hard food. Mm-hmm.
And then hard food, and then their steak, and then maybe like
great point.
What's the thing all those rich people eat? The fish eggs,
caviar.
It's caviar, all these things. Like, so you have to give people what they can handle. If you give somebody that can only handle milk, caviar, you're gonna kill them. You know, like literally their brain can't process that.
Well, if I can jump in, I don't think it's that so much as it is. KRS makes the caviar available.
Mm-hmm.
People have sampled it, but they're not willing to do the work to be able to continue to pay for that caviar. If I put a banquet out before you from simple, like the other day, I had a taste for what I call old food. I got a tin of corned beef with some onions, some peppers, seasoned it up. I fried some plantains and I had some rice. Mm-hmm. That's poor people food. But it takes me back to a place where when we first came to this country, that was like a staple. It's something we ate fairly often. Mm-hmm. You got your starch, your protein, or two starches and a protein, mm-hmm. right? So from the corned beef to prime rib to caviar, people will try it all. Oh, I like the lobster. But how much does lobster cost versus whiting? Mm-hmm. So you have a taste for seafood today. So for you to eat lobster on a regular, you have to make a certain amount of money. And a lot of people are not willing to continue to educate themselves to be able to make that kind of money so that they can fund that type of lifestyle. KRS is not cheap. And I mean his message is not cheap. You can't listen to KRS and just sit on your ass. That's not how his message works. You know, that's why he's not dancing music. Dancing music sounds good. It feels good to the body. You get up, you shake your ass, and you go home. Mm-hmm. You can't do that to KRS. He will make you sit your ass down, listen, and actually process. That costs money.
No, I hear you on that because I also associate my level of education with privilege. You know, something that a lot of people may not have the privilege to obtain a master's degree or even have like a personal library, you know, to that extent. But yeah, I think you're right. It seems like KRS-One is talking to a specific audience, not to everybody. and those who are in the position to take on the information and do something with it. I guess that's who we're talking to. We're not talking to the average person on the streets. Is that what you're saying?
Yes and no. I just say KRS is talking to everyone, but not everyone understands him. The same way Jesus became even more popular after his death, a lot of people didn't understand his message while he was here, because what he was saying made perfect sense, but you had to slow down and listen intently enough to understand it. It made more sense after he died. And I'm not saying that KRS needs to die for his message to be understood, but I think the people who understand and listen to KRS are on a particular wavelength, if you will, if I can get mystic on people. And when you're on that wavelength, you are one of those who actually understands how society truly runs. Doesn't mean you're a conspiracy theorist, doesn't mean you're into, all the other stuff. It just means that you're not the average Joe. Because the average Joe that listens to hip hop just wants to be entertained for 3 minutes, because that's usually how long the songs are. And that's it. It's a nice beat, you catch the hook and that's it. But you're left wanting more, because in 6 weeks, that song's not gonna be number one anymore, and it's on to the next one. But you can listen to all of KRS, all of his rhymes from '88 and get a message. It's not about whipping Nene right now, you know what I mean?
I like you referenced it, like referencing similar to Jesus. But as you were talking, Aaron, I was thinking about MLK. I was thinking about, like, he talks about it, right? We talk a lot about what America needs to do, but KRS-One, let's say, in the line, he says, America ain't really sick. This is what it really is. It's gunshots and cages for black and brown little kids, right? That's the same message that before King. It made me think of King, but the same thing King was saying, the same thing that's happening since America became America. They came, they destroyed who was here. Then they couldn't do stuff themselves. They brought black and brown people over. They stole them. It's not like we had the choice. And this is America. And America is still the same America today. There's some changes, but it's still the same setup. It's anchored the same way as it was over 400 years ago. And I think this is what he's saying. We're still, like I keep saying, there's always hope in his message. MLK told you this is what's happening. We need to change. This is the hope. He got killed for it. Malcolm X. So I think this is the same vein.
Do you consider KRS-One to be a prophet, a messenger, or guru? What do you consider him to be?
I would call him a messenger. He calls himself the teacher, but a messenger definitely, because there's always a message in his music. I wouldn't go as far as to say a prophet just yet. I haven't studied him long enough. I do catch I do understand that there is a prophetic nature to his, to his art form. And I guess on some scale, it would make him a prophet, but definitely a messenger. Definitely a messenger.
And you, Joel, how do you see him?
Very similar. I think it's very prophetic in all his stuff. There's not only a lot of thought-provoking statements, but questions that he asks, right? Like here, Do you see our interests represented in society?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you hear that and not think about that? And how do you hear it, think about it, and not try to change it? How do you just sit in it still and not find a way to change it for yourself? And if you have family, for your family, for the next generation. So it's very prophetic. What you asked, is he a messenger, a prophet? What's the difference to you? That's the only way I can answer the question.
Nah, actually, on the reverse, how do you describe it? I guess to label him, it's not a right or wrong.
No, I know it's not right or wrong. But what I'm saying though is like, when somebody asks that question, you need to know their thought pattern, right? Like for whoever's saying, is he a prophet to you or not? You know, some people say prophet is one thing, like Muhammad is a prophet, Jesus is a prophet. Some people will say James Cone is a prophet, right? But other people will be like, the only prophet is Jesus, because that's what they told me in Bible study. That's what they told me in Sunday school. That's what my grandmama told me. So that's why I asked that question. And I think
so then what is he to you? I guess that's how we can determine what's your theology.
I mean, I'm very much the same way. I think he's a great messenger. I think he's very prophetic in his statements. And I know a prophet only becomes great, like Gogo said, after they're dead, right?
Yeah, I think you only know a prophet once they're gone, and what they've been saying comes to fruition.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's possible that a prophet can be a prophet but be alive. I'm just curious.
I think they can be prophetic, but not necessarily a prophet. And this is what I mean by that. Prophets usually say and do things that have yet to be. That's how I see it. Now, I might say something today, tomorrow, Monday, and it happens years later. So you can say I was prophetic in that sense. But to me, for a person to be a living prophet, that has to be like their thing. KRS-One doesn't necessarily, what I say he's a messenger because he asks questions and he points out things that are already happening or that have already happened and use those as points to, get his message across. He isn't saying that this is going to happen. He points out things that are happening already or that have happened, which is why I say he's a messenger, because he's pointing to that. He has a message about what has happened in the past or what is happening now, presently, as opposed to him highlighting something that will happen later that we can't necessarily pinpoint yet. And I think that's the difference between, in my opinion, he being a messenger versus being a prophet. So a prophet to me in today's day and age would say, okay, you know what? This is going to happen so and so and so, and then it happens. There's like a pre-knowledge kind of situation that has to occur for me to label someone a living prophet. Which is why, like my wife will tell you, it pisses me off to see people call themselves a prophet. Like I just in my travels, I'll see like a sign, prophet so and so and so is going to be at this location on this and this day. And what people don't understand is that if you are a prophet, witches and warlocks cannot be in your presence. People who talk smack cannot live in your presence. A true prophet walks into the room. You don't understand what will happen if a true prophet walks into a space. With all the snakes that are out here today, if a true prophet walked into my church, do you know how many people would just run out? Because I know we got a couple of people in my church, in every church. Yeah. So in the presence of a true prophet, a lot of this foolishness that we see going on just would stop. So anytime I meet somebody and say, oh, this is prophet so-and-so, so I turn my back immediately. I'm like, get out of here. Get out of here. That's just my opinion, but hey.
This is from a Caribbean perspective, right? And I don't know if this is going to be part of the podcast or not, but based on what Gogo was saying, and I've told you this before, something happened. It was a Caribbean church, and there were a lot of, I don't even know what to call it. A lot of happenings is a great way to say it. And there happened to be one pastor, minister, whatever you want to call it. It was a minister that came into the church and was preaching and talking. And when he started, like, all these people that were part of the happenings left because they just couldn't stay.
Yeah.
They just couldn't stay because it was too much. He was a prophet. He didn't call himself a prophet or anything like that, but he had a power that they could not stay with.
And that's the key. You can't label yourself a prophet. That is a title that is given to you. You don't select that title. And people who are doing dirt, who practice iniquity, cannot be comfortable in the presence of a prophet. They can't. It's like hearing that, like a dog whistle. It does something to people who just they can't be in the presence. I've seen it happen back home. Like somebody's coming down the road. People who work iniquity, when you see them coming down the road, you leave because it does something to your spirit. Conversely, people who talk smack, when the true man of God is coming down the road, they bounce. They bounce. I can't.
I only asked, and thank you for your responses, because the going definition of a prophet is a person regarded as an inspired teacher or proclaimer of the will of God. And it's also interesting to add that prophets, majority of the time, seem to exist in Christianity's doctrine. But I just really do find it interesting that how you guys describe and believe what a prophet is, and that a prophet cannot claim itself as a prophet. But then I also see in some definitions that there is this idea that they're like fortune tellers. They can tell the future somehow. I don't know. It just seems like this is something for another episode, but just really trying to break down like what's a prophet, because in the back of my mind is Dr. Afaro's, interpretation of what a prophet is as well. And, we had that course where teaching about millennials and how he believes, the young or the youth are prophetic. But then you're also saying that there's a clear distinction between being prophetic and being a prophet, which I'm also looking at too. I don't know. But I do think it's an interesting topic though, like to really explore more, because how we describe prophets and prophetic things, it's okay for someone to do an act of God, but if someone is saying that they are speaking for God and they're also claiming that certain events or things are going to happen, because I have come across real people that have claimed to be prophets, and I really was genuinely trying to understand, well, what makes you a prophet, right? And you're saying that a person would think that they're a prophet because they feel, one of these definitions. They either can tell what's going to happen, or they're speaking on behalf of the will of God.
What's going to happen? Fortune tellers are biblically, they're in the Bible. They're not called prophets.
They're synonymous. They're synonymous to prophets.
No, but let's say you go to the Exodus story, right? You go to that whole Pharaoh and all that stuff. Pharaoh's priests were able to do the same thing as Moses.
Yeah, but Moses, I mean, that's not a sturdy account. Moses lived for like what, 200 years, and he told his own death.
It doesn't make. I'm just talking about different traditions. It religiously, it doesn't matter. But fortune tellers don't go around calling themselves prophets. If you call, there was like, I forgot the madam, but there was like this when I was a kid, that 1-800 commercial that you could call and you get all the fortune. Yes,
Miss Cleo. Yeah.
Miss Cleo.
Call me now.
You can tell everything, but is she a prophet? I've been in a store and somebody came up to me and was like, blah, 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 blah is going to happen to you, and it did. Does that make them a prophet?
That's a great question. That's what I'm asking. Like,
so I don't think so. I think prophetic is a prophet is something different.
So then but you just described that a prophet has to apply to both those two criterias, right?
Okay. I was driving Uber years ago, right? I have a woman in my car. As I'm driving to take her, I'm maybe a block and a half, 2 blocks from where I'm gonna drop her off. I have to go 1 block straight, make 2 left turns to drop her off, right? So I'm literally about to go around the block to drop her off. As I cross over, I look out my window and I see this other woman on the sidewalk. You know, you're just driving, you see somebody, you just happen to notice them. That's it. I'm deep in Brooklyn, like some neighborhood I've never even been to. I couldn't even tell you where I was. So I look over, see the woman, I keep driving, make the first left, second left, drop off the woman who I had in the car. As I drop her off, my phone goes off again, another ride from Uber, so I accept it. I make the next left, and the same corner where I saw the second woman, she was my next pickup, right? So I technically saw my next ride beforehand. So she gets in the car, close. We drive off, maybe a block away. She's like, "You're a pastor?" I'm like, "Excuse me?" She's like, "You're a pastor." When she first said it, she said it questioning, "You're a pastor?" And before I could even answer, she goes, "No, you're a pastor." And I'm like, "No, what do you?" She goes, No. You're going to be a pastor. So the weirdest thing is that was a prophetic. She spoke prophetically over me, but I didn't consider her a prophet, because I think sometimes we have moments where we can say we're divinely inspired. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. But to me, a prophet is a person who has those moments, but has dedicated themselves to Christ. Like there's a difference there.
I don't think it has to be Christ, because you have prophets and other traditions.
Has dedicated themselves to their faith. I'll put it that way. Who's a practitioner and not just. But I'm very adamant about how they refer to themselves, because I think if you take on that title, it makes you more of a fortune teller. It puts you in the category of you wanting something by taking on that name, as opposed to people referring to you that way because that gift in you just comes out. Mm-hmm. See, there's a difference in me giving you an offering, and you asking me to sow a seed. You follow what I'm saying? See, certain people who claim that they are so, they ask you to sow a seed, AKA give me some money. Whereas a prophet will say something over your life, it comes true, or it happens, or whatever the case is, and you feel compelled to give them something. That's the difference. A prophet will be taken care of just by virtue of them having the gift. Mm-hmm. Whereas a fortune teller, a soothsayer,
you need to ask.
Is going to ask.
Yeah.
And generally they ask before they give you the pronunciation.
So in terms of receiving a payment, that also disqualifies you as a prophet if you are doing it for the money, is what you're saying.
Well, not just that. If you're asking for it.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're making a business out of it, pretty much.
Yeah.
Things came back to my memory, right? We were sitting in the lobby of Riverside Church waiting for Go-Go one night. And I forgot his name, came up to us and said something prophetic about both of us. It's not something we asked for. He didn't ask for anything in response, anything like that, right? But it was it happened to be something prophetic. I'd sooner call something like that prophetic or him a prophet than somebody coming and say, hey, I can tell you this if you do this for me. It doesn't even have to be money, right? You give me a ride home and I'll tell you this. And I'm sure it's not the first time it's happened in your life. It's not the first time it's happened in my life. Like, for me, it'd be like calling every single person that saw me as a child that called me a little bishop, as a prophet. They might have been saying it's prophetic, something prophetic. I don't know why they were saying or whatever reason, but I wouldn't call all of them a prophet. Mm-hmm. Throughout my life, I wouldn't call all of them a prophet.
But there is also something to be said for the spirit of prophecy. Because you can have people who are not so sharp, say some profound things, mm-hmm. or speak prophetically over a situation, or because aside from that, there are situations where kids mm-hmm. speak prophetically. And here's a for instance. My sister-in-law died several years ago, and when we had gone up to Connecticut to see her, she was literally on her deathbed. So we all go up there to see her. We come back. Then we hear she took a turn for the worse. We go back up the next day. We come back. The next day she passes. So of course, the Florida crew who came up, our house was full. So my son just made 8. He was 5 at the time, I believe. My wife is crying because her sister just passed. Her aunt is crying. Her cousin is crying. A lot of people here are emotional in the house. And my son at 5 says, Daddy, why is everybody crying? And I'm like, okay, well, Auntie Sandra, she passed away and so on and so on. And he looks at me with a straight face, as if he's talking about business, and just says, so Daddy, if Auntie Sandra died and she's with Jesus, why is everybody crying? And it just kind of, like, every time I tell the story, I'm getting goose pimples. Just every time, it's just like, at 5, he had enough belief in his being to know that if you are with Christ, you should not be crying. Like, if we believe what we believe, mm-hmm. we believe that she died, we believe that she's saved, we believe that she's with Christ right now, what are we crying for? And to me, that's prophetic at 5. Like, I learned a lesson from him that day. Mm-hmm. If nothing else about faith. So if a child can understand that and can communicate that effectively enough for this idiot here to understand it, the child wouldn't be able to call themselves a prophet. He wouldn't even know what that is, but he knew enough. He knew enough to communicate that. So that spirit of prophecy also I think it inhabits everyone I think it inhabits everyone all the time. I just don't think we listen to it.
You think it's possible that this word prophet is more of like a past tense way to describe people and not a present or future?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that too. Yeah.
Again, like destiny and happiness.
Yes.
It's a destination.
Right. Or it's more of like a past context kind of word. We never really think about that, right? Like words that only exist to describe things in the past. But it sounds like maybe that the word prophet should be more used for describing a context in the past. Like this person's long gone, but they were talking this stuff for long periods of time, and a lot of this stuff came to fruition. So to refer to them in a past tense, we kind of give them this title of saying you're a prophet or they were a prophet. But then everyone has the ability to be prophetic, is what you're saying. This spirit of prophecy can fall on any of us, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that we got onto this topic, but it's interesting too to me that we're talking about an important messenger, if you will, like KRS-One, and we're also coming from like a very theological space as well. So to clear up those kind of terms, I know people may have their different views on whether he's a prophet or not, but at the end of the day, he's a messenger. We can all agree on that, right? Delivering
I think
these
he has
messages.
a prophetic spirit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't think a prophet is only with respect to religion or theology, because in the back of my mind, I believe that Nostradamus was a prophet too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
People say his predictions, but why are they predictions as opposed to prophecies?
Right, because they're taken out of the context of religion, right?
Yeah.
But in the context of religion, then he would be considered a prophet. Right? That's a good point. Yeah.
Or if we stop limiting the way we see prophets to like this tiny space.
Right.
Inclusivity, which we don't have, then yes.
Right.
But also understand, religion and theology is a man-made construct.
Yeah.
Some sort of applied to Jesus. Obviously, there was no church even immediately after Jesus. So beforehand, there had to be people who were able to prophesy. They may not have had a word for it.
Well, I mean, the Torah, is filled with a bunch of prophets, but I hear what you're saying.
They were called prophets after the fact.
Right, after the fact. That's right. Yeah.
That has me thinking, and I don't know too much about them, but all these other, what is considered pagan religions, right? Like all these other religions, Greek religion, all these mythical religions, don't they have the same thing?
Yeah, and again, the synonym just changes. Sage, mystic, magician, sorcerer, like they all play a role like that to try to be the in between, from here in the next realm or spiritual realm, and try to travel back and forth to receive some type of divine knowledge or hidden knowledge. So it definitely depends on the context of, the understanding. Like Christianity, the word would be prophet. But the name changes tremendously across the board. Like Buddha would be considered a prophet, but at the same time, in context of Buddhism, there is no prophet. They're all Buddhas. They're all Buddha. Awoken.
But then, correct me if I'm wrong, the way Buddhism works is more about elevating your consciousness.
Yes.
So it's not about foretelling or prophesying.
No.
there's nothing to foretell.
Right.
Elevating to the point where you understand all of that stuff anyway.
Right.
So no need for a prophet in that.
That is a good point. Yeah, so it seems like within Christianity and maybe Islam, this context of, or understanding of prophet is very specific, to that context.
But I think
it's used more, maybe.
I think you bring it to the Imago Dei, or like in the image and likeness of God. And if we're really trying to reach that, aren't we doing the same? Isn't it the same thing?
Not really.
Well, in the context of a prophet, I mean, that's what we're talking about. I mean, everyone can have a prophetic moment, right? That's what we were agreeing on. But
Buddha, in terms of Buddha,
Buddha is a state of consciousness, so that's everyone's achievable. Everyone can achieve that. But then you could even argue the same thing in Christianity. Like, everyone could reach a consciousness like Jesus, but a lot of people would say that's blasphemy. Like, I can't be like Jesus.
Differently in the sense that Christianity and Islam is based on you praying to or believing in something outside of yourself, as opposed to Buddhism believing within yourself.
That's a very interesting statement, Drogo.
So when you're looking at your salvation being based in or on someone or another entity outside of yourself, it presents itself differently than you believing that salvation is within yourself.
But that's because of the books chosen for us to read and study. But if you go outside of the canon, right? Jesus is telling you to look within yourself. True.
That is true. Yes.
But also, but Christianity teaches you can't go to God but through the Son. Your belief is still in Jesus. It's still in Christ. So there's no intermediary in Buddhism. You are all encompassing.
Jesus, and it's not it does do all that, right? But if you go to Jesus was always pointing to God, like this is what we're trying to be like. And like you have everybody else points to Jesus. This is who you're trying to be like. So it's just where do you draw the line? We've accepted like the theology of everybody else. And I think and the reason we're seminaries to form our own theology.
Okay, but let's say hypothetically, if you were to eliminate Jesus, there's still a God that you pray to. But in Buddhism, there is no. That God is you.
Is you, yeah.
And that God is within you. And although the God that we pray to is within us, there is still a separate entity that is God that doesn't exist in Buddhism. It's all about elevating your mind to the point where there is no other plane you can go to. The highest plane you get to, that's it. So I think just by not having those, like Jesus, let's say, as a stopgap, or having God as the end, it's just I guess the belief system's kind of like it just makes you think differently. So not having a prophet just means, okay, well, everything that you need to exist is within you. You have it all built in. You just got to figure it out, sort it out, and bring it to the surface if need be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Previously, I've been going over apophatic versus capophatic. And these two terms basically is apophatic meaning like imageless or meaningless. And capophatic is more like we put meaning and symbolism into objects or physical things. So I think that Christianity tends to do sometimes is allow people to see God as this exterior image, if you will, and not so much remember that God is in us, but that we focus on an exterior imagery of God versus apophatic that focuses on not so much describing God, because God is then indescribable, but understanding that God is in all things, not just these exterior objects or something, So that is a good point that you say that even, everyone knows that God is in us, but how often do we actually play that out, like practice that, And it seems like Buddhists are very blunt about that up forward, like the universe is in me or God is in me. But you go to your, an average person that believes in Jesus Christ and you say, what do you believe? And you won't typically hear like, these things are in me, or I possess the keys to the kingdom inside me. Instead, they perceive it as like an exterior thing that they have to like achieve or go find,
Well, I think that's part of the problem with religion today, in that people think God only exists in the church. So,
and that's that exterior manifestation, right?
God doesn't live in me, within me. I have to go and seek God every Sunday. I have to walk into God's house, which is, and I think that's why, humans can perpetrate what they perpetrate on one another, because God, it's like when you come to visit me, you come to my house. So Gogo lives here,
Right. Instead of saying Gogo lives in me,
Gogo doesn't have a presence outside of his house.
Yes.
So they assume God only lives in the tabernacle. God only lives in the church. God only lives in the mosque, or wherever else you go to, to pray, or to work. And that's how, you have the evangelicals in Congress who can do what they do and vote the way they vote, because God only exists in the church.
Or in the process of getting into your position, putting your hand on the Bible and being sworn in, that's the only time God really shows up, right? Other than that, it's like...
And I don't even think it shows up then. That's just symbolic in that, with respect to swearing in, because if they believe that, because I'm pretty sure that they open every session of Congress with a prayer. Mm-hmm. So if they believe that and said that prayer wholeheartedly and believed it, they couldn't vote the way that they vote. They couldn't do what they do. They couldn't pass the laws that they pass. To them, God only exists within the walls of the church. So the minute they step out, they're literally turning their backs on God until they walk in the next time they go to church.
Right. I'm almost like a ritual that symbolically represents God has ordained me with the authority to carry out such tasks. And then that's it. Yeah. Like, I won't speak about God ever again, Yeah.
I would go even further, not the walls of the church, but the wall of their particular church.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Yeah, definitely.
Of course.
Definitely. And that's so interesting, right? Like, imagine the followers of Jesus in the first century. They were so fascinated with this man, right? Like, oh yeah, I want what Jesus has, And they physically saw Jesus, right? And they were like, God is here, right, in the flesh. And then when he's murdered, where's God now? And so they have to come up with the story of trying to explain that, like, God was not only in the flesh. That was just a one-time maybe thing, like to hint towards something bigger, right? God is not gone because Jesus was murdered, but God is still here, right? And it seems like it's a lesson we're still trying to learn as a collective, that.
I feel like what you just said, they all wanted to be like or to have what Jesus had. Then they didn't listen to what Jesus said, because he was like, yo, I don't have nothing.
Yeah, he did hint towards that. He always said, I have, yeah, he was homeless. He didn't have anything to offer but truth.
But it's, I can see how and why the disciples felt and acted the way they felt and acted, in the sense that he's saying he has nothing and he truly had nothing, but yet he was able to perform miracles. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you got this friend, right? He ain't got no money, but he's never hungry. He don't have a mansion, but he always got a place to stay. He ain't got no car, but you always see him in Jersey and PA. You see him at all the popular functions, right? And you go to him one day to borrow $1,000 and he said, I ain't got no money. It's like, but dude, you was in Miami with us. You was in California with us. You know, you came through on, you know, in the Hamptons. How you ain't got no money? You follow what I'm saying? Like, we hear all the stories about you living it up, doing so and so and so, but you never got any money. You know, it just makes you wonder. Like, we heard all the stories of, we heard what you did with so and so and so with the Rolls Royce. You know, you came through homeboy's car, whatever, it broke down, and you hooked them up with the Rolls Royce. Like, you bring people back to life. So you doing huge things. Now I ask you for $1,000 and you ain't got $1,000?
I'm gonna be real heretical in saying what I'm saying right here, right? But I think maybe Jesus was just good in bed with the women, and that's what made them take care of him, because that's who was funding him.
But who knows? But I just say to myself, I can understand, because you hear all these stories about this dude, right? And this is your homeboy. You with this dude on a daily. And then you see him do certain things. And then when you reach out in a particular way, it's like, nah, I can't do nothing for you, man. It just makes me, I can see, you know, it's like a cognitive dissonance with the disciples. I can see it. But I just saw you do so and so and so. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, that is true, though. That's a good example. Good imagery. Yeah, especially for Peter, right? Peter struggled so much in trying to understand what Jesus was trying to teach him. And he was like, you know, especially when like he offered or invited Peter to step out into the water. You know, it's like, Peter's like, listen, I hear what you're saying, but I ain't doing this. Like, this is crazy, you know? And he's just like, come on, trust me. Like, you know, you're trying to show him something more, but Peter couldn't grasp it. I think that's just to wrap it back together, like KRS-One, right? That's what we're talking about. You know, he can invite people to elevate their consciousness and awaken, you know, but if you're not willing to bite, or you think you're not ready, then, you know, nothing's going to happen from it. You know, no transformation's going to come from it. So I love how you said earlier, KRS-One's talking to everybody. You know, it's not just a select, you know. So that's powerful, you know.
But you know what's crazy? You know, conversely, I look at other rappers who do a whole lot of talking but don't say nothing. You know, versus KRS, who's saying a lot, but people ain't listening.
Yeah, that's true. The power in words, right? He's intentionally choosing his words and then organizing them in such a way to deliver a powerful message to you, right? Whereas some people just rhyme, lottie-toddy, foddy-goddy, goddy-goddy, body, boom. You know, and it's like over some nice beat.
And they ain't saying
talking about a club banger, right? And,
they ain't saying a damn thing.
Nothing's even in the message. And here you have, you know, a spoonful or more just in every verse. You know, it's just like, dang, you gotta like slow it down.
And nobody's listening. You know, that's why I say KRS is expensive. Like, you can't be the average Joe will not understand. You had to have spent some kind of time, and I use the word spent on purpose. It costs you something to listen to KRS-One, because you can't truly listen to him and not, you can't hear KRS and it not cost you something, because you had to have either spent money on your education to open up your mind enough to hear it and understand it, or if you don't have the luxury of an education, you had to have at least sat down long enough to interpret what he said and apply it to a point where it's costing you something, where you don't do something that you used to do. So you're giving that up. That's a cost. Or you change that which you were doing to do something else. That's a cost. You make decisions that impact your life. That's a cost. You know, if it means you no longer spend $200 on a pair of sneakers, it costs you that particular look or that lifestyle or it costs you a particular group of friends. You know? And albeit I can listen to Jay-Z and listen to KRS, I can't listen to them in the same day kind of thing. Although Jay-Z has his own way of addressing certain things, Jay-Z to me is the equivalent of the fortune teller. Wow. As opposed to KRS being the prophet. I would look at it that way. There's a message from Jay-Z, but it's more about getting to the money. It's more about telling your fortune. You're gonna make money this way, you won't make money that way. But KRS is telling you it's not all about money.
Yeah.
And I think his message is more poignant, and I think his message speaks more to me elevating myself as opposed to just elevating my bank book.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't know how much you just said about Jay-Z. Like, we can't put this on what I'm gonna say, right? We can't put this on the podcast. But he don't move unless he's making money.
Of course. Yeah, he said that.
He does not move unless he's making money. Like, all this money he's giving to social justice and all that stuff.
He's not paying for that.
It's not, yeah. The only way he's doing it is because he's making money back. Mm-hmm. And not only for himself, he's controlling what his wife does too. He's like, nah, you're gonna give this money to this social work? Nah, the only way we're gonna give the money if they come on what's where he goes through like all his music. His streaming
app. Yeah,
the only way we give is if they come here and give us this. They will give $1 million. But I'm giving $1 million after I make $4 million.
You give to get, yeah.
He's not a give to get. He's like, I'm getting my 4 and then I'll give you the 1.
But understand what he said. I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman.
That's true.
Yeah.
Those are his own words.
That's exactly true.
Right. And I get it, but at what cost? So you want 4, you want this $1 million, no problem. I'm gonna make you make me 4 for me to give you 1. So that's not even a fair exchange. That's not even a fair exchange. That's you just using your own people to benefit yourself. Yeah. So it's not costing him anything.
It's not you're using people who have less,
who have nothing,
who need to give you stuff. What's that difference between him and that pastor that says, "Give me a stimulus check because the church need money"?
Well, there's a big difference. Ask me why.
Why? I want to hear this.
At least the minister had the balls to tell you.
Right? That is true.
Jay-Z framed it as though, he's doing something for the community. Mm-hmm. Jay-Z frames it as though, the minister at least had the audacity to say what he said. Jay-Z is still selling drugs.
Yes.
Just not in drug form.
Yes.
Jay-Z's still doing the 2 for 10 kind of thing, but now he's doing 1 for 4.
Right. He's doing.
I'll give you $1 million and I get 4. It's no different. Exactly. He's just hustling a different way.
Right. That is true.
He still
is that hustler from the 90s, the 80s.
He's still on the block. Different sounds. What he's hustling is music or whatever else it is he's peddling.
Capitalism. He's learned how to use it better.
So he's not selling dimes anymore. He's selling whatever it is, he's selling power and influence. But to me, again, the minister had the balls to say, call out what he wanted.
Right. That's true.
Which to me is no different than, I'd rather deal with a known racist than a liberal who only sides with me when it's convenient.
Mm-hmm.
I had a neighbor tell me the other day, he voted for Biden and Kamala, and his brother said, we got to talk about this. I don't know why you voting for those people, so and so and so. And what he said was, he thinks his brother might be racist. And I said, this is my buddy. You guys, I talked to him about you guys before. I said, that's not news. Your brother's always been racist. I said, you voting for Joe and Kamala didn't make him racist all of a sudden. I said, your brother's been racist. You just didn't see it. So, Jay-Z hustling what he's hustling now, he's been that way.
Right.
This isn't anything new. The same way KRS has been this way. You know? I don't think you have this, this kind of epiphany and just change your view. No.
So drastically, yes. Exactly.
Yeah. I said, listen, man. Newsflash, your brother's been a racist.
Right. Or there's some fragment that was there.
The weirdest thing is that he kind of like just stopped and like looked at his feet for like a good 10 seconds. It's like I put a real weight of bricks on his shoulders. Like, listen, I said, you can't tell me that you feel your brother's racist now because, you told me you voted for a black woman. I'm like, yo, listen, your brother's been racist. You just haven't seen it because he's your brother.
That's tough. Have like a racist family member.
But a lot of people do. But you know what's crazy though? I think even as black and brown people, we all have people in our family who maybe not racist, in the true definition of the word, but or at least prejudiced. Right. And it doesn't make it any less wrong because we're the oppressed. I don't feel it's. Although the racists, we look at the racists a kind of way because we're affected by it. Harboring those negative thoughts, even as the oppressed class, is to me, it may not be just as wrong, but it's still wrong. So yeah. I don't give people a pass because they've been on the receiving end for so long. A wrong is a wrong is a wrong. I don't think you can get past it feeling the way you feel. Or you can't justify it because you've been the oppressed class for longer than.
Right, they can't be your scapegoat. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Again, thank you so much, Go-Go. You led the way with your profound wisdom.
I don't know about the profound part,
Always profound.
Maybe it was prophetic.
There you go. There you go. It's prophetic.
The spirit of prophecy.
Oh, gosh.
Please.